Hey, York Explorers, Mr. Ord here. This is day number 2 of equivalent fractions, and we're going to be looking at basic equivalent fractions today. These are kind of like the math facts of what you should be able to recall pretty quickly. Remember, equivalent means equal, and here's what we mean by this. So if we kind of take a look at this. So if we have the fraction, this is like how many pieces we cut it up into. If we cut it into halves, well, what's equal to 1/2 is 1/2, and 2/2 is equal to 1 whole. So if we look at fourths, move this up a little bit. If you cut 1 whole into fourths, 2/4 is also equal to 1/2, and 4/4 is equal to 1 whole. If we scoot this up, it's going to get a little bit squished here. But if we look at eighths, 4/8 or 4 out of 8 is equal to 1/2. And 8 out of 8 is equal to 1 whole. The next one, and this will be the last one that we talk about, and then we're going to look at the fraction wall online. If we look at thirds, it's really confusing for how many thirds actually equal 1/2. It's like 1.5 thirds equals 1/2, but we're just going to put an X here for us. And 3/3 is equal to 1 whole. All right, so now we're going to look at the fraction wall. Okay, so this is the fraction wall that we've used before. So what I'm first going to do is make it so it's completely filled in. So you can see here, this is 1/2, but if I click it in, it's 2/2, but it's also equal to 1. Right here, 3/3. 3 out of 3 are shaded. There's 2/3. 3/3 is equal to 1. All right, and you can see here, all of these are all filled in, equal to 1. 10/10 equal to 1. 5/5 equal to 1. 12/12 equal to 1. All right, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to get rid of this one. We're going to see all the fractions that are equivalent to 1/2. I'm going to cut those out. You can see them on the side changing. And this is where I was saying on that anchor chart. Here, I mean, there's really nothing. You can kind of see it's like 1.5 thirds equals 1/2. So usually we just don't count those. There's 3/6, 6/12. Same thing with fifths. Here it's like 3 or 2.5 fifths. So we're just going to cut those out. Okay, so now you can kind of see along the side here, there's 3 big zeros there, but you want to focus on 1/2, 2/4, 4/8, 3/6, 6/12, and oops, 5/10. You can see they all take up the same amount of space perfectly. The other thing you want to start to notice is the patterns between the numbers here. So you can kind of see 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, 5 to 10. Kind of think if you see some kind of pattern that's happening between these numbers, if you compare 1 to 2, and then you compare 2 to 4, and 4 to 8, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, 5 to 10. Think about, for a few seconds, what kind of pattern do you see happening there? Okay, hopefully you started to kind of notice that when you look at these, the top number, or the numerator, is half the amount of the bottom number. And here's what I mean by that. So if we look at 4/8, 4 is half of 8. Because if you do 4 plus 4, you get 8. Same thing with 6, or 3/6. If you do 3 plus 3, you get 6. So the top number is half the amount of the bottom number, or the denominator. So any fraction that's equivalent to 1/2, the top number, this number, the numerator, is going to be half the amount of the bottom number. So you could use that for any kind of fraction. So if we have 100 pieces and we wanted to know what fraction is equivalent to 1/2, it would be 50 hundredths. Okay, I'm going to show you what you're working on today. Okay, so when you open up the assignment today, this is what you're going to be looking at. I'm going to zoom in just a tiny bit. This is a box full of different fractions. You can see kind of 2/4 and 8/12, 2/8, 3/6, 2/6, 6/8, 9/12, 4/12, 4/8, 3/12, and 10/12. So when you come down here, if a fraction in the box is equal to 1/2, highlight them in yellow. If a fraction of the box is equal to 1/4, you highlight them in green. If the fraction in the box is equal to 3/4, you'll highlight it in teal. If the fraction is equal to 1/3, you'll highlight it in orange. If the fraction of the box is equal to 2/3, you'll highlight it in blue. And finally, if a fraction of the box is equal to 5/6, you'll highlight them in pink. Use, and here's the website for the fraction wall, to help you find equivalent fractions. Here's the one strategy that I would recommend. If you're not sure how to go about doing this, we're going to do these first two right here together. So if we look at this, so if we look at 2/4, okay, how do I even go about figuring this out? What you want to do is click here. You can also use the rectangles as well. But what we want to do is say, okay, let's first show 2/4. This is doing the rectangles without the paper pencil. Okay, so I'm going to find the fourths right here, 2/4. Now look, you're going to have to go back and forth. So if you look at 2/4, we're going to go one by one. We're going to model 1/2, 1/4, 3/4, 1/3, 2/3, 5/6, and see which ones take up the same amount of space, because if they take up the same amount of space, they are equivalent fractions. All right, so let's start with 1/2. Okay, so these are the 8s. Oh, there's 1. Okay, so we found it on the first time. So 2/4 takes up the same amount of space as 1/2. And when you go to highlight it, that means you highlight in yellow. When you come up here, here's the highlight button. All the colors are in this second row. All right, you don't need to go down here. It's this second row. So we'll highlight this in yellow. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, 8/12. So these are the fractions that we're seeing. Which one is it equivalent to? So we'll come back to our fraction wall. I like to click this. You can also left click and it gets rid of them. Okay, so let's come back to this. Let's come up to here, 8/12. So that's what we're going to model. There's the 4ths, there's the 8s, looking for the 12s. Hey, there we go. Okay, I got 2. There's a showing over there. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 12s. All right, now we're looking to see, okay, does it take up the same amount of space as 1/2, 1/4, 3/4, 1/3, 2/3, or 5/6? Which one is it equivalent to? Okay, so I remember 1/2 is right there. No, not quite. All right, the next one in green, 1/4. Nah, 8/12 is way bigger than that. Okay, 3/4. All right. Ooh, 3/4 is just a little bit bigger. 1/3. Okay, there's the 8s. Let's get rid of that. 1/3. 8/12 is way bigger than 1/3. Okay, 2/3 now. Ah. Okay, they match up perfectly. They take up the same amount of space. So 8/12 is equivalent to 2/3. Come back to here. Highlight it in blue. Because 8/12 is equivalent to 8/12. And that is what you'll be doing for the rest of these to find out which fractions are equivalent.